absolutely. I mean, I share Clive's view of the Archbishop's comment on a number of areas, the way we need to look at this, and we need to look at the long term. Absolutely, I share this real, and this is where I speak really from a CBI perspective. And I think what people perhaps don't always understand because we don't communicate it effectively, and our behaviors don't always live up to our words. But in reality, business is very concerned with this issue right now. After this 6 years, 7 years of downturn, not only business, but large institutions, but particularly large businesses, particularly large business leaders are not trusted, by the population. Indeed, only 32% of the population in a CBI survey believe that businesses even act ethically. Really? And only 52% think that they're a force for good. And this is a serious issue. And this is a serious issue not just for society, but it's a serious issue for business. Because actually, the reality of this in a free market environment and in a caring society where you want your consumers to be wealthy and healthy, you need to be sure that you're credible with your consumers if your business is going to be successful. And actually, it is therefore critical that business is able to better engage, talk about those things that it does do that are important for society, raise taxes that pay for all the services, create more than 1 million jobs that have been lost in the public sector in the last several years, to continue many companies to do outstanding work in research and in their communities, but also to understand that the gaps between the rich and poor, the haves and the have-nots, have grown very, very large. To understand that people want to be treated fairly. I liked very much the Archbishop's comment about the Synod saying that you needed to be fair, generous, and sustainable, the steps. And if you focus particularly on the fair and sustainable, that would lead to a successful business that would lead an ability to be generous with your employees, your customers, and your shareholders, who are often institutions who are paying your pensions. So I think there's a real realization that we have to understand that fairness issue. And what we've seen also, whether it's in banks or utilities, is do big businesses really care about us at all? Are they making life so complicated for us that we can't understand what's happening? That we don't understand their pricing mechanisms or whether they're being treated fairly or not? And on top of that, we see disproportionate rewards between those at the top and those at the bottom of society. So a bit of a long-winded way of saying that's why when we started this debate, so we need to have a proper debate about the role of business in society. Because those like Clive and others who really care deeply about this, business is society in the kind of environment we have. And as the Archbishop said, other alternatives to move totally away from that have too often ended up in totalitarianism. And I think we have a really serious issue to try and address as to how we balance, we don't knee-jerk to this, how we need, and if I can come back to the point lastly on productivity, Liam, and this comes to a core that we really also need to understand, that a lot of people today are understandably now feel that globalization and technology are their enemies for some of these reasons. Actually, one of the problems we face in this country, notwithstanding our recovery, is very low levels of productivity. We're still significantly less productive than countries who we'd like to think we're better than. Actually, I'm sorry, we're not, like France. And we've got to do something about that environment, about investment. And it comes back again, I think it was mentioned, this fundamental issue of skills and training and education. Because unless we get this right for society here, we are going to have real difficulties in the long term getting the productivity improvements we need. So the bottom half of society that Clive refers to have got the skills to move up the value chain and can earn the kind of higher level of earnings that they need, they deserve in terms of working. And that's a complex equation. But this is a long-term project. We've been getting skills wrong for a very long time. And we have to get that right.
I mean, one of the things that's been great about your presidency of the CBI, though, is your kind of determination that the CBI should engage in this debate.
Yes.
When you talk to your members, what do you think is their kind of appetite for business engagement and leadership in defining some of the answers? Because, certainly, I mean, I used to be a CBI member before I came into... I was in the wrong place at the wrong time in 2004 and got elected to the Commons. Back then there was often a caution, wasn't there, about getting involved in some of these quite big strategic questions.
All I can tell you is that when we've worked this through, and we started working this 12, 14, 15 months ago, and talking about it at the President's Committee and the Chairman's Committee of the CBI, there was immediately, we have to do something about this. We have to start thinking differently. We may think we're doing a perfect and great job, but we're not. And even where we are, we're not perceived to be, and we've really got to get our act together. Somebody said, I was just saying, we did a dinner last night with the Blueprint, with the Cardinal Vincent Nichols last night, with about 15 chief executive chairmen, and the whole discussion was we need to really understand this issue and find some way of balancing society, or we'll end up with, some democratic implications that no one's going to like, and market implications.
That's a good way.
And one interesting comment that was made that stuck with me. Somebody said, you know what, to the Cardinal, someone said, look, you know what we need to understand is this crisis in confidence in business was caused by bad behavior. It's oversimplistic, but true. And it's not going to be overcome by words.
Yeah, very, very good way of putting it. And your sense is that those amongst your members are kind of in it for the long haul?
Yes.
It's not, interesting.
I mean, absolutely, because, look, as I said, you want healthy, wealthy consumers.
Yeah.
We want sustainable long-term business. We could talk for hours about the pressures of public companies on shareholding, quarterly reporting, long, short, all of these things. But, there is still the need for boards to be courageous enough to think about the long term. It's not going to be the thing that solves it, but the Companies Act has recently been changed, which the first time requires you to think long term. But, there are pressures in a free market that we have to balance about how we do that, how we educate institutional investors. And that's why, Liam, as you and I discussed it, these things, initiatives, which Francis knows this, I think it's so much we need to do between business, politicians, trade unions across the party. But it requires institutional investors too in this.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, they're the people who own the businesses in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you. Francis, I mean, you've been at the